Hello, and welcome to this 19-0 unstoppable
Jesus.
edition of the Purple Journal podcast. I think we also could have named it the We Were Right edition of the Purple Journal podcast.
But one of you was more right than the other.
Quiet. That didn't make the agenda tonight.
I also want to say that was the most chipper hello I think that you've ever had on this podcast.
Well, do you blame me, man? I mean,
no.
You know,
early. Settle down. It's early.
I know, but my perspective is I was talking to somebody at the viewing party after the game, and his girlfriend was telling us both to kind of settle down, and I said, well, you know, as Vikings fans, like, this is kind of our Super Bowl. Like, things like this we have to really relish because, you know, things obviously happen. So it was just a great freaking game, man, and it seemed to surprise a lot of people, and we'll get into it, but first I should probably introduce you guys.
Only introduce me if you stop saying 19-0.
Well,
I agree.
All right, well then, here alone with me is Luke Braun.
Luke,
no, I'm not here either. If you're gonna start talking about 19-0,
hey,
please.
Man, no, there's no. I'm the type of person that genuinely doesn't foresee us winning a Super Bowl in my lifetime, so I can't picture it. So I'm not really on that bandwagon, but I like being the dissenting voice, since that's apparently what I am everywhere, as most of the Reddit guys at our party gave me a lot of evil eyes, which was great. Until I gave them fidget spinners, then everything was fine. But anyway, that was Joe Oberle and Luke Braun. Joe writes for Purple Journal Podcast, Purple PTSD, and the Sports Post, and he was at the game in the press box. Have a good time.
I was working, Joe.
Oh yeah,
it was good. I met some really cool people before the game, so that was nice. So yeah, it was good.
Hey. One of those cool peoples was Luke, who was also at the game, which is amazing because he, as everyone that listens to the show knows, hails in Southern California, so it was kind of a destination vacation type thing, and what a great game to go to.
Yeah, it was awesome. I've been to 2 games at the stadium now, and they've both been Monday Night Football, and they've both been convincing wins, so I'm pretty jazzed.
Should we start like a hashtag Get Luke season tickets sort of thing?
Well, my dad does have season tickets. I would have to move back to Minnesota, which don't start a hashtag because I'm not doing that.
Hey, are you calling
me? Get out of here.
Are you calling me a townie?
I don't know.
I am.
Maybe Zimmer's record on Monday night for big time games is getting better, if that's the case.
Well,
yeah.
You know, it was. It seemed to be an extremely well-coached game. You know, there was some penalties, and I'll be completely honest, because I like to have transparency on the show. I was trying to balance a million things at once with the party and everything, so I did miss a substantial amount of, like, especially the defense. I was making sure everything was kind of in place, so I didn't get to see a lot of, like, the actual game plan or anything. I saw a lot of, like, the results and everything, obviously, but it seemed like they had I guess the best way to put it is Zimmer definitely outdueled Sean Payton, who's supposed to be this offensive mastermind. But, you know, the narrative I've seen seems to be that people don't understand why they kept handing the ball off so much. And maybe they thought they identified a weakness in the Vikings run game, but it didn't seem to work for them. So I was just wondering initially what your guys' thoughts were on that.
That you know, what last year the Vikings had such a rotten run defense, and so that's probably the place to attack them, and then, you know, maybe run AP at it. Well, they had, you know, it was early on in the game, they had given the ball to 4 different running backs, you know, and it was kind of strange. It was out of character for the Saints because of Drew Brees. You know, they used the pass to set up the run, but they did it the other way, and of course you had Peterson back there, so that whole narrative, the him coming back home, you figured they would want to give him the ball. So, you know, I felt that was a little out of character, and, you know, maybe neither team started out of the gates. They had 3 consecutive drives aided by penalties.
Yeah.
So I didn't see even the Vikings as monsters at the midway at that time. It was just it was really some bad maybe jittery, nervous ball right out of the gate.
Yeah, it seemed like the Saints were moving the ball really easily on the first drive, and then the defense kind of flexed in the goal or in the red zone. And they did that all night. I mean, a lot of those field goals were from like the 5-yard line, it seemed like, for the Saints. So it seems like their goal line defense really came through, especially disregarding the garbage time touchdown against Trey Waynes. But, yeah, I don't know if it's just a nerves thing, but it does seem like the defense, if I recall correctly, even last year would start out a little slow and then figure out what the offense was doing and then kind of take over. So it was super encouraging. I mean, Luke, what were your thoughts on kind of the defensive game plan, and then also the run defense, since that seemed to be something that was pretty good?
Defensively, it's hard for me to remember because most of my thoughts are on the other side of the ball, which I suppose we'll get to. But I mean, stopping Drew Brees is really hard. I do think that they sorely missed Willie Snead in this game. But I think they were like 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 in the red zone or something like that until that stupid garbage time touchdown, which, I mean, there was just like stand after stand after stand with guys just like doing their job. I think it does warrant pointing out that Trey Waynes had a really bad game. He gave up like he gave up like almost 100 yards just on his own, which is really bad, obviously.
Yeah.
But
he got
Mackenzie
burned
Alexander
on that double move.
Mackenzie Alexander had a really nice game in the time that he came in because Xavier Rhodes was cramping. And then Newman had to move outside, and Matt came into the slot, and he actually had a really nice game against that really good offense. And then I also think they didn't blitz a lot, did they, if I remember?
No.
Which was interesting because they still got pressure. So they must have really, really felt confident about being able to get pressure with 4.
Well, part of that... The offense. I was just gonna say the
3.
offensive line for the Saints kind of had some injuries, and then they had a couple rookies going up against like Everson Griffin and stuff. So that
they had a rookie on Everson Griffin. They had. I thought Max Unger was hurt, but he played. I was wrong about that. I think I said something about that on the last podcast, but he played. And Linval Joseph ate his lunch.
I wouldn't go as far as to say Trey Waynes had a terrible game. He got victimized for the touchdown. He got burned deep for that one big ball, which is where a lot of the yards came up. But other than that, he was tackling left and right. He was,
there was an excellent yak preventer. That is true. I'll give him that.
I was going to say,
and he came up strong in a number of plays. He was involved in a lot, and he looked aggressive. He was coming up to make tackles like Antoine. Yes, and so I gave him an okay game because you can't overlook those other 2 plays. One of them was in garbage time. It doesn't matter. He still got beat for the touchdown. But for his first game, to really get back into it, after missing most of the preseason, I thought it was for me it was a promising sign.
I have to disagree there. I think according to PFF, every time he was targeted, he gave up a catch. And some of those were, they were just like swing passes, and he made the tackle, and that's making the play as best you can. But he did, he gave up. He got burned real bad deep once, and I think he had to resort to a PI to do it. Yep. In terms of yards per cover snap, which I think is a really good measure of cornerback play. He was tied for 4th worst in the whole league for week 1, which is bad. Although the 2 of the guys above him, one of them was a Saint that we torched, and the other one was Joe Hayden, who we get to go up against next week.
Yeah, they were. I forget who the Saint corner was, but I think
DJ Williams was bad.
One of the announcers said he's basically shouldn't even be in the NFL. Like he's being outclassed big time by Thielen, I think it was. So there was that. I don't know. I say this almost every week, but I'm obviously personally invested in Trey Waynes, and I want him to do well. And I don't know if I want to call it a professional level, but just on a team level, obviously, if he plays well, it's good for the team. But it seems like he has consistent issues with something that I think Luke identified last week or the week before, which was like on the garbage time touchdown, he gets boxed out, and people make catches underneath him, like Treadwell style, or what Treadwell should be anyway. And I don't know. I'm not so much worried about the deep ball just because he's still caught up to the guy, and granted he did interfere with him, but I have a feeling that'll get better. But I don't know if physically he has like the size. He's such a dainty guy in person to physically overcome a lot of that. And at this point, after 3 years, if he's still playing that far off the ball, I just don't understand.
That's why it was so great to see him make tackles. You know, he had the shoulder injury, and you figure he's going to be a little gun shy coming back from that, but he stuck his nose in there. I'm curious on those PF Pro Football Focus grades. Do they consider how many times you are attacked, or how many plays you're involved in? Does that factor in? You know,
I am not sure about the grades or whatever, but yards per cover snap is the measure is how many snaps you were involved in coverage. And the amount of yards that were gained when targeting you, and then you just divide the two.
Because, I think you got to factor in fatigue. Well, they came after him a lot, and you got Xavier Rhodes, who probably wasn't challenged that much at all. In fact, he spent part of the game on the sidelines. You know, does that mean he had a great game? I would say not necessarily. I think he had a game better on reputation. I'm not a Trey Waynes Bobo. I am just heartened by the fact that he came out and stuck his nose in there, and he looks like, he's poised to move in the right direction. Obviously his numbers may not have graded out well. That's fine. I think it's going to get better going forward, and that's what I'm concerned about.
And what it showed to me, though, is even if they do go after Trey Waynes a lot, the rest of the defense is good enough for it to kind of even out. You know, it's not like they were exploiting them for touchdowns left and right, and the score was close. They were still able to stop them in the red zone, obviously. So
they also had Harrison Smith over on his side at times. I think that was just to be over there to help him out as well. And then they'd switched him and Zendejo from time to time, and I had to feel like that's part of what it was. Trying to Rhodes doesn't need Harrison Smith next to him, but Trey Waynes might just to get him going.
Did you guys have any thoughts on like how the linebackers played? I know Kendrick started off like a madman.
Kendrick's had a hell of a day.
He's amazing. And that kind of goes without saying, but I was more looking at what you guys thought about Barr and Gideon out there.
I think Gideon held his own, and Barr showed up here and there and actually showed some emotion on that one play. Stopped that swing pass from behind the line, but it was there was so much Kendricks out there. He was flashing constantly. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, Kendricks and Joseph kind of took over, and that's why the Saints running game was just could never get going. Adrian Peterson or Kamara or Ingram, I think they had like identical stats. Nobody could get moving against them. Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. But Barr was fairly quiet, but not in a bad way, and Gideon was almost entirely neutral. Right. Which is fine. He played some. I don't know how many snaps he ended up playing, but his coverage was okay. I think Pro Football Focus only credited him with one allowed catch for a negative yard, which is fantastic. But no run stops, which you kind of want to see him, have a little bit more of an impact. And there was one kind of really bad low light where they ran right at him and somebody just pancaked him. So, rookie mistakes, but overall, we've seen kind of what a bad rookie defender will look like if you think back to like Trey Waynes' rookie year, Mackenzie Alexander last year, and Ben Gideon is not in the same tier as that. For his rookie debut, not the worst.
And it's probably an easier position for him than playing corner, but
he probably didn't much of it in the second half when they finally started throwing the ball a lot more. He probably came out for nickel.
Yeah, I think they were a nickel for a lot when the Saints fell behind, which is fine.
Yep. What did you guys think of the before we get into the offense pretty in depth, the whole ESPN narrative of the death stare that AP gave Sean Payton and all that drama? I only bring it up because I was always the type of person that was like, bring back AP. I don't know how, he's not the same person, but at least he can move the chains or whatever. But even I'm pretty sick of talking about Adrian Peterson, to be honest. But it seemed like to me the reaction from the crowd at the party was like, yeah, welcome to the AP club, New Orleans. You're going to deal with that all season. I mean, it's been, a quarter and a half, and AP's going to murder Sean Payton.
We've never seen that kind of mutiny type look from him ever. And you figure it probably has gone on in the background where he's, wants the ball because he was the focal point of the offense for, most of the 10 years he was here, and it continued to be, and it was probably part of the reason why Zimmer and what's his name, Norv Turner, had disagreements about the offense. So I guess I've got a little AP fatigue as well, Joe, and I thought, for me, the game justified exactly that the Vikings made the right decision to not offer him a contract. I mean, I said right before the game that I thought he'd get 10 carries for 27 yards. I was actually kind of generous and actually sweating that prediction when he got 9 on his first carry. But he was exactly what he was the last year he was here and part of the year before. He just, I don't know what's gone wrong with his game, because he obviously doesn't have the power. He probably doesn't have the speed, but he can't get past the line like he used to. And that first play he did, he moved half the Vikings defense to about 5 yards. It was amazing. But after that, there was nothing. And 3 running backs, they all got to get the ball. I was amazed that I've never really seen that kind of attitude from him, to basically scream at your head coach like that. And, you figure he's demanding the ball or whatever. So I thought that was out of character a little bit, but maybe I don't know enough about his character.
He claimed that he was telling him that they needed to play a zone or something. He was really testy with that journalist, who, to the journalist's credit, was really not taking any of AP's football answers. AP said, these are rumors. You guys write about the rumors. I can't help that. And then the reporter said, well, you can help it by stopping it right now and telling us what you said. And AP said, I was just telling him that we should try to run a zone against that defense because I know the defense. And the reporter said, it didn't look like that's what you said. So it was kind of nice that a journalist wasn't just like, oh, okay, thanks, man, and, walked away like I would do. But, yeah, it seemed like there was more to it than that. And it all boils down to what everyone was saying when the Saints signed him, which is, how does he fit into that offense? Why did they add him in the first place? And whether or not AP's expectations in signing with the team were different from what the execution is going to be, and that'll play out throughout the year. But that kind of segues into the main question and that I brought up in the intro, which is
can I offer Adrian Peterson to talk?
Yeah, sorry.
Because I don't want to talk about the death stare, because I do not care even a little. But in terms of his on-field performance, Joe, you kind of talked about not knowing what's going on with his game. I think, honestly, this should have been pretty predictable for all parties involved. I think the Saints need to look at how they evaluate running backs, because there were, for the last 3 years of Adrian Peterson's career, there were a lot of signs that were relatively apparent that he was declining. If you look at success rate and if you look at the kind of running back evaluation metrics that are better than fantasy points and yards, and the kind of things that really separate a running back from his offensive line, stuff like success rate and yards before contact and yards after contact and stuff like that, there was a very clear pattern of decline for since about 2013.
Okay, because I was going to say, I don't disagree with you, but the only season he's played in the last 3 years, he still won the rushing title, and I know that was a volume-based thing, basically.
Yeah,
but
it was a volume-based thing, and if you look at that season in particular, was very indicative of a declining running back who got a lot of carries because, the passing offense was struggling a lot. So
that still doesn't tell me what's happening. That tells me the result of it. The fact that he
lost his burst.
He's old.
I know he has, but the guy still is strong. And he still is in great shape and a beast as before. You'd think he's still just as powerful. He certainly showed his run. But
not to interrupt you, sorry, but I think his game was based on, he was always kind of a atypical running back. Like, he would cut back against holes and make his own opportunities by breaking through tackles. And even if you lose 20% of that. That could be the difference between getting tackled in the first level or not being. I mean, he made his money breaking through the second level of the defense.
Right.
So just losing that, I mean, that was his whole game. He was never like a guy who followed holes very well or picked up yards in other ways. He was always just such a like I formation, 20 yards back, runs, cuts back against the line, makes somebody miss or breaks through a tackle and goes. And if you lose, like I said, even 25% of that power, that's a huge difference. So that's probably what's happened.
Across the line, someone who can do that, who's got more pop in their legs, that can cut back and find the hole. And we already know that Dalvin Cook has got better vision than maybe Peterson did in his prime. I don't know, but it's just fascinating to me to see that. I mean, it's Father Time is undefeated. It's going to get you, but he looks smaller out there too, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's coming through my perspective or whatever, but he just doesn't look like the beast that he was. It's kind of a shame.
Yeah, it's not so much this like magical. Zimmer actually had a really good point. It's not magic. The run defense, they were all in the right places and they won their blocks and stuff.
Yeah,
but with Adrian
sorcery
himself, throughout his whole career, he had success rate issues. And for those who don't know, success rate is a measure of if you got more than 40% of the yards on first down, 60% on second down, and then third and fourth, 100% of the yards to gain. And Adrian Peterson was never that good at success rate, which was always fine because he was famine, feast. He would have an unsuccessful run, and then a really big run, which would only be logged in that stat as one success. So his success rate would be a little misleading. But now that the feast kind of can't happen because he can't burst through a hole with that like elite acceleration that makes it so linebackers and defensive backs can't. That was what he did with us in like 2012 and earlier was he would just blow by linebackers that had the angle on him because he could accelerate so quickly. But due to age, that acceleration is kind of the first thing that's gone, and his whole game fell apart because of it. And now he's just kind of a one-dimensional power back that you can't even really put in on like passing situations because he's a tell.
And
he only got 9 snaps.
Exactly, and when you only have 9 snaps and your success rate is low, that it's not going to work. You need all the snaps. He
needs those famines to get to the point where he feasts because it's just a low probability thing that you need to give him a big enough sample to like get the quote unquote feast. And when you have Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara also in your backfield who are arguably just better players at football at this point in Adrian Peterson's career, why would you why would you commit a whole bunch of your offense to a running back who can't even do the thing he's famous for anymore?
Yeah, it's like I was just going to say, you can juxtapose his career to like Randy Moss's, who Moss came into the league and was known as just like a freak, like AP, who had, remarkable speed that no one had ever really seen before. But I think Moss got lucky in coming into the Vikings and working out with Chris Carter, and he added things to his game, like having amazing body control, and he always had ups, but having probably top 5 hands in the history of the league. So as Moss got older and he lost that speed, he kind of offset it with other things, like size and being able to.
Tom Brady strategy. Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. So AP just doesn't have a diverse game, and that's what his
Moss
problem is.
wouldn't across the middle. Anyway.
He did sometimes.
Some very rarely.
He had that one-handed catch across the middle. But anyway, speaking of juxtaposition, we could talk about the offense a lot a bit, and look at the game of Dalvin Cook, who broke AP's record. It reminded me of when AP broke the single game rushing record against the Chargers, and LaDainian Tomlinson kind of had a bad game and was on the sidelines the whole time. It felt like a torch passing thing. Not that AP's still considered the best running back in the league like Tomlinson was at the time, but it was really cool to see that happen. So I was wondering what you guys thought about his game, and also it's not nitpicking, just to bring up, he had like 3 drops, I think, in the passing game, which I attribute to jitters. Yeah, he did.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, if he would have caught those balls, I think Bradford would have had like a 90% completion day. So
something just insane. Oh yeah, that's right. Bradford had like 2 or 3 drops, and those were Dalvin. Yeah, I like the way Dalvin played. I don't think the running game was as good as the stat line would suggest in total. I think there were a lot of missed blocks, especially on Riley Reif and Nick Easton, who both had outstanding games in pass protection. So, it's ultimately fine, but it is worth bringing up that they struggled in the run game, and Kyle Rudolph had a really bad run blocking day. But what I really liked, because Dalvin Cook had a couple of outlier runs, couple of chunk plays that made up half of his night, which is fine. But there were a lot of, similar to Adrian, there were a lot of unsuccessful runs as well, which came down to, missed blocks and a few blown assignments and some communication stuff. But what I noticed that really encouraged me more than any of the records or any of the stat lines or the yards is that there were a lot of situations that Dalvin Cook turned unsuccessful runs into successful runs by finding a hole or, just falling forward correctly or, taking the yards that the defense was giving him. He looked really veteran savvy, and that's really the most exciting thing to me. He got that edge speed around the corner and had a couple 30-yard runs, and that's great, and that's going to be really fun to watch, and fantasy owners are going to love it. But what I really like is, the first down run where he was dead to rights after a yard and he ended up getting 5. That's the kind of thing that I think is really, really, really going to provide a value to the Vikings that is hard to describe.
He is the line did very little to help him out in the early going as far as opening holes. And like you said, yes, he got a lot of it on his own with just his second effort and pushing through. And he's, people. Well, yeah, it wasn't until he broke that first 32-yarder that to that point he had 48 yards, and that was late in the third quarter, I think the first one was, and so it didn't happen for a long time where he really got going. But people have talked about him not being that big. I think this guy's he's in his chest. He seems to be real barrel chested and has good upper body strength. I think he's going to be a guy that can probably do what Peterson used to do and just push through the places where there's not a hole and find a little bit of daylight and get some yards. It was fun to watch him and great to have on your fantasy team. Should have got him in the end zone though.
Yeah, I'm not too worried
that's the
about
only thing missing.
The drops either. I think it's his first game. It's Monday Night Football. It's something
that was the first play too.
Yeah.
First play was a pass to him and he bobbled it. I think he came up with it, but. So yeah, I'm sure he was nervous, and they all looked a little bit unsure of themselves. Even Bradford before he really settled in and got going.
Do you attribute the slow start of the offense, the line, or rather how Cook picked up yards at the end of the game? Was that something where do you think the offensive line sort of started blocking a little bit better, or do you think that it was just opportunities created by Cook, or a little bit of both?
They were
out. Kind of got tired.
Yeah, that's true too. But both those runs kicked outside a little bit. They weren't necessarily up the middle.
Yeah, they were. One to the right, one to the left, I think.
No, they were both to the right.
Oh, well, there you go.
Behind Rammers.
Hey, well, let's talk about the line a little bit since we touched on it. They seem to be providing a lot of good protection for Bradford.
They did great. Yeah, they did great in that regard. Like we were talking last week, our threshold might be low, but you got to be careful to put the word great on it. But my goodness, 1 sack, all his clean pockets. He had plenty of time to go through his progressions, find receivers. And that reminds me of other thing we can talk about later. The fact that he's calling his own plays. Oh my goodness, how wonderful is that?
Yay!
But he had time to go. Sit back and look around, and a couple times it looked like he was waiting on that long 45-yarder to Adam Thielen. He looked like he was pigeonholing the whole time. It says, "Hurry up, get open, here it comes." But the line gave him the time to do it, and I think many of us said this in years past. Give this guy time to fade back and look the thing over and see what's happening, who's open. He's going to be good because he's a very accurate thrower. And here he had the opportunity, and my goodness, the game.
Yeah, Bradford carved him up, and I guess we'll talk about it a little more later, but, obviously people are going to say, oh, well, Saints defense, and of course you're going to let it, they're bad. But that's what that's what you want against a bad defense, is to just make them look silly.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there were a lot of the highlight plays that were good coverage. That the Saints secondary did their jobs and created a situation where Sam Bradford had to throw into a tight window, and he did so successfully.
The second Diggs touchdown was immaculate throw and catch.
Is that Jarius Wright throw?
Pass to Jarius Wright.
Oh my God.
I've watched that so many times. I can't figure out why he threw it, seeing what you see from the camera view behind him, because Jarius Wright is eclipsed by the defender the underneath. You don't even see him, and all of a sudden he just fires this thing out there. Here comes his pair of hands past the defender, grabs the ball. When I saw it live at the game, I said, "Man, that was a tight window." When I saw it later on replay, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe it.
I called it on Twitter. On Twitter, I called it like some magic out of body experience crap. Like, it was absolutely an incredible throw, and that was, the Saints defense played very well on that play, and got pressure and had the guy blanket covered, and Sam Bradford was still able to make a play, which is something that we don't often see from him, and that's really encouraging. And it's encouraging that he got protection.
Should we question that? I mean, or is he just that good that he sees that small of a window as a great, because he doesn't make that play, I bet you they don't score that first touchdown, and who knows what happens in the game. Granted, he was moving and playing well, but my goodness, I can't believe I can't believe he threw that pass. I can't believe it, but, it's almost like there had curve on it. It went around the defender and curved back.
He did a little massé.
English,
thank you.
And then, and the line protected him very well. I think it's worth, I don't know if I said this yet, but repeating, Riley Reif and Nick Easton in the past both had 0 pressures credited to them. I think there were some issues on stunts that didn't turn into pressures because the ball was out quick or whatever, but either, whatever, that was 1 or 2 plays. They had, outstanding games. And the other 3 linemen had no slouchy games either. I think they each had 1 pressure credited to them apiece, which is, that's 5 guys all having a good game, which is awesome.
And not a lot of, I don't recall any penalties. I think there was a false start in the red zone.
Easton had one, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about it. But, talking about, I don't want to at all kind of turn a positive situation into a negative one, but before the game, there was a lot of people at the party that were wearing hashtag team sleeve shirts that they bought from Vikings territory, which somehow means they bought them from me. And
yes.
So at the end of the game, I sort of thanked everybody, and then I did a mic drop where I said the conversation between Bradford and Teddy's pretty much over, which I had to do out of personal spite based on my relationship with Reddit and my reputation as a Teddy hater. So I kind of was feeding into that a little bit, and people laughed, I guess, and sharpened their knives a little bit. But it seemed to me. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm just being like a homer who's super excited, but I was born in 1984, and there's that the record that came out a couple weeks ago that said that the Vikings have never had a quarterback start back-to-back seasons since 1978, and so quarterback plays kind of a contentious. Yeah, not all 16 games. So we've never had a quarterback
all 16 games.
Play all 16 games in back-to-back seasons, and so Bradford can't do that this year because he didn't start the first game last year. But my point is that it seemed to be some of the, if not the best quarterback play we've seen from a Vikings quarterback, at least in my lifetime. Favre started out slow, but obviously had an amazing season, the best season of his career. But Bradford seems to be playing on a level that I think deserves recognition that isn't just hyperbole. I mean, like I said earlier, had we not had those couple of drops that were just screen passes, he had an 81% completion, I think, this game, and
the
ball
highest
down the
yards
field.
per attempt. Highest yards per attempt in the league for the week too.
Yeah, he was the NFC Player of the Week, and he played like a top 5 quarterback, to be honest. And
I will say though, Joe, to say Bradford seems to be playing this way, I think you got to wait with that verb or whatever that word is. It seems he played. He played at this level. He's got to keep it up. He's got to play against a better defense, which is going to probably happen next week. He'll be fired up in Pittsburgh. He's got to do it on a consistent basis. The line has to protect him like that, and then we'll see. Because, you saw him last, I still give him credit for doing everything he did last year behind that line, but we know that was all check down Charlie stuff. And this was so exciting to see him go downfield. They had 7 plays of over 15 yards, which is two more than any game they had last year.
And like 4 or 5 over 25, I think.
Exactly. So that's great. That's all great. But I'm not saying the conversation's over. I mean, he's the quarterback. He's the Vikings quarterback. He looked great. He's got to keep it up and build on that, and then you can drop your mic.
There's the narrative too on national media seemed to be, it's Bradford starts strong but he fades, and they were talking about last season, which, like Joe, you mentioned, isn't entirely fair based on what happened, but I don't know a lot about his career before he came here. I know obviously how he was drafted and the expectations and the injuries and everything, but people are kind of, I guess, on a national level and then on a local level as Vikings fans also kind of waiting for another shoe to drop. And we touched on this a lot, but the question, I guess, is how much of what we saw was, and this is really hard to determine in week 1, but are the Saints just that bad, or were the Vikings dominating a mediocre team, a bad team? Or is there any sort of like pump the brakes because the Saints weren't very good?
There should be.
Yeah, sure. You're not going to see 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every game.
This was
of course not.
This was his best game as a pro, and that's telling right there. The fact that he's been in the league how many years, and it's 349 and 3 touchdowns. That's his best game. Okay, well, that's great. But it's he obviously doesn't do it every week. Yeah, I got to pump the brakes. I think the Saints came in, they were fired up. Everybody's fired up. Peterson, blah blah blah. Monday night, opening night, and they just weren't. They have a very young team. They have a bunch of rookies on defense and free agents. They're going to be better, but they aren't a good defense yet.
Yeah, the defense is not ready to be a good defense. I mean, they have so many young players and new players, and honestly, I remember as I was looking at like their off season for this podcast last week, I remember thinking like, man, none of these moves really like rock the boat. Like, yeah, it's a bad defense. Kenny Vaccaro and PJ Williams
too, man.
Yeah, Kenny Vaccaro and PJ Williams both had really bad games. One thing that I saw that really, I think, defined the game for me was how many of Adam Thielen's huge catches, he was manned up on a linebacker. And I don't understand how the Saints allowed that to happen, but we're not going to get that kind of blessing every week. Right. And that's the kind of thing that, because he's matched up on a linebacker. How in the world? The Saints were man-on-man for, like, a lot of the game, which doesn't make any sense to me because their cornerbacks were clearly outclassed by our wide. It's like they underestimated Diggs and Thielen and Treadwell. They left Treadwell isolated almost all game, and he got open a lot. But on plays where Adam Thielen was also manned up against the linebacker, so go to that.
Hello. All right, sorry, my mic. What did?
You dropped your mic?
No.
Oh, Jesus,
I thought the battery died. Why? What? Did you hear something?
No, I'm kidding.
No.
Okay.
It's just a lull. The game plan was really good. The Saints kind of let the Vikings have a lot of gifts, but that isn't to say that a lot of the stuff we saw was really encouraging. Like, that's why I'm not focusing too much on like that first Diggs touchdown was just a blown coverage. Kenny Vaccaro didn't read it fast enough and left him wide open. Like, better safeties are going to be able to contest that catch. But the second touchdown on blanket coverage, contested catch, amazing catch by Diggs. That's the kind of thing that excites me, We didn't get a lot. We got a lot of plays that we can kind of erase because, the Saints defense played poorly. But there were plays where they played well and the Vikings were still able to find success. And that's what we can look at and be excited about. That's what's sustainable.
And that kind of ties into the play calling of the offense. And I know we've talked a lot about Shermer as a play caller this offseason. And I was wondering what your guys' thoughts were. Obviously, he outdueled whoever Greg Williams' replacement is on the Saints. big time. I mean, there, like
Dennis
you said,
Allen, former Raiders head coach.
like you said, there was blown coverages, there was mismatches on some of our better players. How much of that do you think was Shermer, who did go deep, and Joe also said Bradford called a lot of plays, and I know one of those plays was one of the big Thielen catches, if I recall correctly. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on just the game plan in general, and if you expect the Vikings to be this high-flying offense next week, or was it just something that Bradford took advantage of because of the terribleness of the Saints defense?
Take it away, Luke.
Do it.
I mean, yeah, I'm a huge Shermer hater, but he called a hell of a game.
Hey.
There's no two ways about it. He called a really, really good game. He was able to. I mean, I love putting Thielen in the slot. That's something that I actually didn't like when I first heard it posited to me by somebody on Twitter, and then they explained why, and it was basically, hey, you can get him manned up against tiny slot corners and linebackers, and that is a great mismatch that it was amazing that they were able to achieve.
Why didn't you like it? Was it because of his yakety yak?
Yes, because I was overvaluing the idea of yards after the catch, but you can have him run a post from the slot and just wreck face, and that's fantastic. So that obviously that worked out really well, and I'm glad that I was convinced to support it. I like the way that they had fun wrinkles with the offensive line, with unbalanced formations. They had Mike Remmers move over to the left of Riley Reif, and they had weird formations like that, and just a lot of the interesting wrinkles that really, really worked. Not to mention just a more aggressive strategy. The average depth of target, which was a huge talking point all offseason, they improved by almost a full yard compared to 2016's average, which is great, and I want to see them continue to do it. And if they can continue to get protection, if the line can hold up and at least stay out, they won't be as good as they were last night. We can't expect every game to go that well, but if they can just hold up to average and keep deep routes alive and give the wide receivers time for their routes to develop and time to create separation, we kind of saw what Shermer's offense is supposed to look like, the way it was drawn up, and that's really encouraging.
I didn't spend a lot of time looking at this, but Luke or Joe, did you guys notice that Kyle Rudolph was held in a lot to block, and when he did go out was double covered? I saw him double covered a few times, and I thought that they were really trying to take him away because he was his
weird game plan.
It was.
I know, but he was his go-to guy, certainly down the red zone.
There you go. Yeah, I mean the narrative in reading before the game was that Rudolph is Bradford's favorite target, and he's going to have a monster season because he had that great year last year, and obviously he had all those red zone catches last year. That seemed to be what it was. I mean, you didn't hear his name a lot. I think he had that one catch near the goal line.
Rudolph had a touchdown, which was also a Kenny Vaccaro blown play that he didn't read fast enough.
Yes, and Kyle Rudolph spiked it like he'd been kind of frustrated not getting much sooner. I think he had 3 catches on the day, maybe even just 3 targets. I'm not sure, but I thought they must. I saw a couple times they were double teamed. What?
It seemed like David Morgan did well blocking. I saw him once or twice perform pretty well, but I could have missed something. Well, that's the thing, and that was something I wanted to talk about was, is this offense turning into a pick your poison sort of situation? Last week we talked about what kind of team we expected the Vikings to be, and if they were going to be a team with a great defense and a mediocre offense that, wins on field goals. But when you have both Diggs and Thielen, obviously having monster games, Thielen had over 160 yards, I think. Diggs had 93 yards and 2 touchdowns. You take one of them away, that makes Rudolph, a target, and then Dalvin Cook obviously showed that he can put defenses at least on notice. Are you guys excited about the weapons that we have? And I did put on the agenda because I still am a huge Michael Floyd nerd, and it's probably going to come up every week till he returns, but do you think that this passing offense is going to be something that's going to be hard to contain based on the level that Bradford's playing at, the way the line played, and just the fact that we have so many different capable players in the passing game? I
won't speak in those absolutes yet. I just can't do it after one game. my years of watching the NFL, I just you know it yourself, Joe, that things change from week to week. And a team that comes out the first game of the year, they're bringing out the stuff that nobody's seen before. Well, now somebody's seen it. And now they've got it on film, and they're going to adjust to it next week. I do think regarding Michael Floyd, that's going to be a nice wrinkle to throw him in 4 games down the road. If you can get the offense that you have in there right now clicking at this the way they did, if you can keep that up, I'm not saying you will. We'll find out next week so much more about this team. But if you can keep those guys producing at even a decent rate, and then you bring in this new wrinkle, that's going to help them too. That nobody knows yet what Floyd's going to do in a Vikings offense, but I just don't think you can say they are anything yet.
Yeah, the Saints really disrespected a lot of our weapons. I mean, they really didn't seem to see like Adam Thielen as a threat, which was a huge mistake, and they allowed linebackers to man up on him, and they got beat every time. And they allowed Laquan Treadwell. They didn't really respect Laquan Treadwell as a threat, which is fair. They basically never gave him one-on-one coverage with no safety help on so many plays. And if you watch him, Treadwell. And a lot of the people who have analyzed the game, and from what I've seen too, he was able to get reasonable separation, and they just never went to him. So that's something that might come into play in future games if teams continue to say, hey, we don't have to worry about this guy, give him one-on-one coverage, and put our safety help elsewhere. That could be something. I think if your game plan is to take away the 4th best weapon on the team in Kyle Rudolph, I think you just messed up, Saints. That's just a gross mis-scouting of who the Vikings are and what their weapons are. But
would you have called him the 4th best or the fourth best weapon before the game? I don't know.
Yeah, Diggs, Thielen, Cook, and then Rudolph.
Based on what?
Yeah, because
I think those are the 3 most threatening players on the offense, aside from quarterback, but whatever.
I mean, I can see why
if I were game planning,
Rudolph.
I'd pay the most attention to those 3 before Rudolph.
I mean, I think Cook was an X factor that they didn't know what to do with because there wasn't a lot of tape. Obviously, he's a rookie. Diggs performs well, but he's also harkening back to Bradford. He seems to start seasons really well and then kind of fade later in the year. I don't know if that's because he gets double covered or whatever, but I feel
it's hurt.
Exactly. But he has struggled also with additional coverage. It seems like when even back when he was playing with Mike Wallace or last season, I think that's why Thielen benefited a lot from that because he was single covered a lot. But Rudolph.
Bottom line, if teams are going to come out with trash game plans against us and then they get walloped,
I'll take it.
Then that's gonna. I'll take. Yeah, then that would be great all season. Yes, please continue to double cover Kyle Rudolph and leave Adam Thielen one-on-one with linebackers. Let's do it.
Rudolph has always been a red zone beast. It's not like he's putting up 100 yards a game. I don't think he's ever done that. So it's not like he's always been the entire focal point. He's just been the red zone focal point, and I think they kind of conflated those two things a little bit, which, again, was awesome. But that kind of brings us to – well, before we get into the Pittsburgh game, I also wanted to just, on an additional note, just to shout out the play of McKinnon also. He's a veteran. He's had his opportunities. I got to sit in on an interview with him at camp, and he was – taking a lot of responsibility for how bad the running game was last season, and he seemed to be handling the fact that there was 2 new running backs relatively well and saying that, he still has his role and he's going to step up when they call his number, and he's done that.
I agree, Joe. I really like the way they used him, and I like the way he performed. It was nice to see. Then that also brings to mind that other running back that didn't such a good game.
Yeah.
Expensiata.
My last, my 15th round draft pick was Latavius Murray, and he get 1 carry in the fumble, and they said that's enough out of you.
I think he came back in a little later.
One thing
on McKinnon, sit on the damn ball on the kickoff. Holy crap! Stop bringing him out from 9 yards deep.
Oh, I like it.
No, you're not Cordero Patterson. Take your 25.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, but I do like.
And that's a Prefer thing, not a McKinnon thing. I think after the first couple, Prefer had to. I don't think he'd be taking him out still if Prefer didn't say no, keep going.
And we have to also shout out Cheryl's, who I just love.
Always makes that first guy miss.
You know, he picks up yards where there aren't any, so
Yeah.
he earns his money.
He wants to stay alive. I swear he's just doing it just to stay from getting broken half.
You know?
Small guy. God, it's amazing.
He does just enough to make the team, so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we've alluded to this heavily, and it's been sort of a narrative, and the Vikings do get this a lot. They got this last season when they were 5-0, and it was, who have they played? They haven't played anybody, so they're not as good as everyone thinks, I think. And I know this is something that I think both of you guys loathe when I bring up, but I love power rankings. I know. So they have the Vikings ranked 10th, and the Packers
Who
ranked
does?
second.
Who does?
I think it was probably NFL.com.
Pete Prisco has him at 17th, Joe.
What?
Yeah.
He's CBS though, right?
Yes, he is.
Okay. So what? Okay, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's completely subjective, but I mean, Pete Prisco is a respected individual. But my point is that, you know, we're facing the Steelers in Pittsburgh, and they're a pretty loaded team, but they did struggle against the Browns, but that's a division game, so take that for what it's worth. I guess I wanted to know, before we get into the fact that Joe cheated his way to a Week 1 victory in the predictions, what your guys' thoughts were on the Steelers game, how important it was, not necessarily for external reputation or power rankings, but just for this team's confidence.
The Steelers, you saying?
Just what the game means and to the team itself, not to like power rankings. You know, beating a team like the Steelers that's, you know, supposed to be a Super Bowl contender or whatever.
That would be such a big upset.
It would be such a big win if they went into Pittsburgh and won, which they have not done yet for a number of years, I guess. And
I think we beat them in London with Matt Castle, but that's about it.
Correct, but that was officially a Vikings home game. So
yeah.
I don't know. I think it would really be big. You know, I think after last week you saw them struggle, and they had, you know, trying to reinsert Von Bell back into the offense, and that was a struggle. And Martavius Bryant was nowhere to be found, much to my chagrin. There was, it was a very uneven game by them against a team that they should have, you know, done much better against. So I think they're opening their stadium at home. They're going to come out very tough and very fired up to do much, you know, better than they did last week. Although Ben Roethlisberger did say that Cleveland's going to surprise some teams. Now, it could be a way of justifying what you just did, but you know, I think it's going to be a really tough game. If they pull that off, then you got to start. Then you got to start thinking and look at the schedule. Oh God, we could go 5-0 again and puke on ourselves the rest of the way.
Who do we have?
There's just the Bucks at home.
Okay.
There's just so much about the Steelers that's so scary. You know, the with the offense with, you know, Lev Bell and Bryant and Brown. Even if you can get Rhodes to Joe Hayden was not very good in that Browns game. He gave up a lot of. He gave up, I think, the most yards in, at least according to PFF charting, he gave up the most yards of any quarterback. He gave up like 109 yards, and he was manned up with Corey Coleman a lot, who had a good game. I do think that Joe Hayden can be taken advantage of, and Artie Burns is young too, so that's good. But on offense, you know, Martavis Bryant, Antonio Brown, Lev Bell, those guys are all guys who can, you know, really, really get going against the Vikings defense, depending on, you know, how they decide to attack us. You know, Le'Veon Bell going at Ben Gedeon could be rough. Martavis Bryant on Trey Waynes could be really, really worrisome.
That's what I'm worried about.
And then on the other side, you know, they've got a lot of talent. Ryan Shazier scares the hell out of me. Stephon Tuitt, I'm really hoping he sits out. You know, just rest that whatever, Stephon Tuitt, because he just signed a huge contract, and he's questionable for the game, and he's a defensive end that could really take advantage of our tackles, especially if they, you know, have a regression from last week. And you know, and we're in the house of one of the best teams in football. This is going to be a really hard game, and I don't think I can responsibly, like, predict a victory. It's going to be a tough one.
The other thing is that they're going to there's no way the Vikings are going to play on that emotional high that they did on Monday night with Adrian Peterson and Randy Moss and, you know, the first game of the year and blah, blah, blah. They were jacked. And you saw, I mean, Bradford was even showing emotion after that one of his touchdowns. You know,
Would that
it's
be
like,
a good thing, though? I mean, considering they came out and let the Saints go down the field relatively easily, and then they calmed
Yeah, I don't
down.
want him too whooped up.
You know, would it
No,
be better
I mean,
to... I know Kendricks
the
is
Vikings
like a
always-
madman, but...
Mike Zimmer knows how to coach an underdog.
Yes.
yes, he does.
And we've talked about bulletin board material, too, which is, I think, the most important thing about a lot of these subjective articles. So I'm hoping that Zimmer will rile him up, and I know he'll do it his way, but, you know,
He
I
should
would.
coach a team in this division, too. He's faced him for how many years when he was in Cincinnati, so.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun
Cincinnati's
stats
awful.
about Cincinnati or about Ben Roethlisberger versus Mike Zimmer defenses over his career, and he's historically been able to get the better of old Zim.
So,
But he's a good quarterback.
you know, I didn't put this on the agenda, but it kind of popped in my head. Well, and I'll start since, Luke, you touched on it, but what do you guys think the key to that game is, and the best way that the Vikings could earn a victory? You know, I think personally, like, again, Luke mentioned that Trey Waynes versus Bryant's going to be huge. But like I said earlier, I do think the defense is good enough to compensate for that. But, you know, there's a lot more weapons than they faced against the Saints, and I don't think that Tomlin's going to call a game as bad as Peyton and company did.
You want to see that their run defense is for real, the Vikings' run defense, because they're going to have to stop Bell. And, you know, even him coming out of the backfield, catch a pass. I don't expect him to be as you know, he just didn't even look ready to play the other week. So I think you'll see Bell. Yeah, and
He was a little banged up, right?
well, no, he didn't show up to camp or to the team until the previous.
Oh, right. Oh, I forgot about all that.
So that's a good thing.
You know, so yeah, and I just think with another week under practice under him, they'll get him more into the game plan, and I think that's key. If they got to stop him, if they can shut him down early, and then I would put you're going to see right Xavier Rhodes all over Brown, right? Yeah, I suppose you would. Yeah, the offense has to have the same game from the offensive line in order for anything to happen for this team this weekend, in my mind.
I think you're going to see a huge test of Gideon and Barr. Or sorry, were you done, Jim?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I think on the other side of the ball, you're going to see a huge test of Gideon and Barr, the outside linebackers. Lev Bell can run up the middle, but I think our interior defense, with the way they played on Monday night, I find it hard to see much. I mean, it's Linval and Kendricks, they're two of the most solid players out there, and even Tom Johnson had a nice game.
He did,
which I was not expecting.
Yeah, good for him.
And I think the interior is strong and will be able to kind of hold up from getting just carved up the middle. But the exterior of it, that's going to come down to Barr and Gideon, and those are two guys that I think we're really going to see what those guys can offer to us in probably one of, if not the hardest test they're going to face this season. So that, I think, is going to be the key to the game. And another X factor we haven't mentioned is Tremaine Brock. He's probably going to play in the game, and I really have no idea in what capacity. If he's going to start over Waynes, if he's going to play in the slot, if he's just going to be rotational while he's still getting the playbook down, I really have no idea. But that could have a huge effect on the games of like Martavis Bryant or Brown or Eli Rogers or any of the, Jesse James, the tight end, any of them.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. The Vikings, granted, I was going to point to some of the quarterbacks they played when they went 5-0 and how the defense really stepped up and had a lot of sacks. I think they had, 8 or 10 against Cam Newton last year, so it'll be important to see how they get to the quarterback and what the game plan is. But
Ben likes to hold on to the ball. They should see a few more sacks this time.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
He's
Breeze is
a
really
big
good at
dude.
avoiding sacks. Ben is not.
So anyway, we'll get to the predictions then because we have a couple minutes left. And I do want to shout out Luke's prediction, which was a softball prediction in my opinion. That
yeah, I didn't. I'll get more aggressive this week.
You're not proud of it. That
Well,
Cook
I
would
I
have
thought I was
doubled.
being aggressive.
What was it?
Remember,
It was
that
that Dalvin
Cook,
would double up Peterson,
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
but he almost got him tenfold. I should have got way more aggressive with that.
So yeah, good for you.
And I was closer on Peterson. I had 10 for 27 yards, so that was a pretty good pick.
Yeah.
And we predicted the score.
For those,
and I
Yeah,
lost.
for those keeping
No
score at
love,
home.
guys, for that pick. No love for that prediction. Wow.
For those keeping No, that was awesome. You nailed it.
Guys can go to hell.
For those keeping score at home of the competition between the Joes, the way we agreed to do this is
Joe v. OG,
absolute
2017.
value, and it doesn't matter if you missed high or low. So, the OG had 23 points to 20 for the Vikings win 23-20. So he missed the Vikings by 6, and he missed the Saints by 1 for a total of 7 points, and whoever has a lower total at the end of the year wins. So it's 7, and Johnson, you missed by 11.
Yeah.
So it's still very close.
I'll get back on track with this.
Well, here's your opportunity.
I am predicting the Vikings will win, and it'll be 27-24.
How?
How?
No, I said wow.
Oh, wow.
Vikings
Yeah,
win,
wow,
right?
and how. I do think that they're a good team, man, and I do think that, like we've said, just because they exploited a bad team, I mean, we didn't really touch on the untouchable or unstoppable narrative, but when you have national media, as funny as it is, saying that, I mean, it's a good thing, and I think that,
Well,
like
they
you
had
guys said also...
the Vikings going to the Super Bowl at 5-0 last year. That's all you need to know.
Well, yeah. Well, and the big thing again is Zimmer's familiarity with the Steelers. So, they struggled last week. Bell might not be in the best shape. They have a couple injuries. I think the Vikings were pretty unscathed after the game, injury-wise.
Despite my podcast-long attempt to tamp down all this hyperbole about the Vikings.
Yeah, well, I mean, is predicting them to win hyperbole, though?
No, well, not you. I'm just saying
Okay.
Unstoppable.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, it is. And I've said, they're not anything yet. Bradford's not anything yet. He did that. Okay, sustain it. Do it for a few more games and then come talk to me. So anyway, despite that, Vikings 20, Steelers 17.
My
You
score
guys are
from last
both
week.
taking Vikings win.
The Kool-Aid tastes good, man.
I will drink.
Wow, a bunch of homers out here.
I will be nervous. I'll be a nervous wreck. We will do a live chat too. We didn't do it because of the live party. And before Luke gets into his non-score prediction, also we are planning to do another viewing party. And it dawned on me during the party that most of the people that would have come were obviously at the game. So I think we're gonna have a lot more people next time. I think Joe, you'll be able to come because it's an away game. Depending, we're aiming to do the December 23rd Packers away game, so we'll announce more of that in the future. But Mr. Braun, what is your prediction for the game? Non-score prediction.
All right, I can't be a bunch of cheery fellas like you. I can't predict a Vikings win. I just don't see them pulling this one out. I just think that Pittsburgh's going to be at home and they're a better team on too many levels of the field. And for my little extra fun thing, Martavis Bryant, top 5 fantasy receiver.
This week?
Ooh.
I think he's going off.
I've
Should I
already
buy him
put
in my daily fantasy?
I suck at daily fantasy, man. I don't know. I think he's gonna have a good game. I think it would be really weird if we didn't have Rhodes shadow Brown. Like he shadowed Odell Beckham, he shadowed Julio Jones, so it's never
Before the
really a
mutiny.
style thing.
He was supposed to shadow Jordy Nelson.
supposed to.
I think that actually ended up only being one play. I don't know. We don't have time to talk about it.
It was only one play.
It was one play, and it was literally just a blown coverage. That was the whole thing. Whatever. But I think Antonio Brown on Rhodes will be a really fun matchup for the broadcast. But I think that's going to eat up Rhodes for the whole thing, and then you're going to have Martavis Bryant being able to pick his choice of Terrence Newman, who looks old, man, and Trey Waynes, who's been struggling, and Mackenzie Alexander, who's also, I mean, he had a nice game on Monday night, but I think Martavis Bryant would be able to take advantage of him as well. So I think Martavis Bryant's going to go off. Martavis Bryant?
Yeah. Do you know off the top of your head?
I think.
Is he like a super big dude?
Boy, I sure do know off the top. 6'5", 201.
There you go. That worries me, even though Wayne's is a big guy too.
I've got Roethlisberger and Bryant on one of my fantasy teams. You're telling me I should play him?
I have Martavis Bryant in a fantasy league. Yeah, I'm definitely playing him. I just think
people always say like I hate to have a guy that's playing the Vikings on my fantasy team, but it helps compensate for the feeling when they lose if you have a guy that beat them. So
It's terrible.
I always recommend
the
that.
same thing with my brother our entire life. He always wants to bet me on the Vikings because he knows I'll always take him, and he just wants to cover his tail.
Yep.
So that, and I think that's weak. It's
an emotional move. It's to save one's sanity.
The other thing, too, is the Vikings have one of the best defenses in the league, so it's probably not such a good idea to play against them, but that's fine. I'm not playing either one of those guys, just so you know. That's why I'm picking the Vikings to win. I will pick them to win until they lose. So there you go.
I love that.
I got screwed by Hurricane Irma. I lost by like 1.2 points, and it's because what's-his-face? Jaya, or whatever, I don't know how to pronounce it.
JJ.
He got postponed, so I had to play Devin Coleman, and that I would have won otherwise. But I lost because of Dalvin Cook, and I'll take that any day of the week, to be honest. But yeah, that's pretty much the show. I want to thank people for listening. I also want to apologize to the people that tuned in early last week and heard a British woman repeating the name of the company I used to edit our show repeatedly. That won't be the case this week. Fingers crossed. It's like being on the subway in London. So
Mind the gap.
We're trying to, mind the gap. That's what I was going to say. Stealing my jokes. Anyway, want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank Anderson Windows for coming to the party and recruiting the Vikings fans. And I also want people to check out VikingsTerritory.com. They do a lot of great stuff. They're doing a lot of pregame and postgame live shows you can participate in. So check out their YouTube channel and their website.
Oh, I can give a sneak Vikings territory preview. I think Austin Mazel's going to put out a Riley Reef preview at some point tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be before or after this podcast, but go check. A Riley Reef deep dive into his game on Monday night. So get hyped for that.
Sweet. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Check us out on a internet machine on Facebook and Twitter at purplePTSD, and check in next week where I'll be catching up to Joe in the week-to-week predictions battle. But thanks for listening. Go Vikings!